Good day guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Ijoma. In today's video I'll show you guys how I made this beautiful corset bustier with a Basque waistline. Please do not forget to subscribe. So I'll draft out the pattern first. Her shoulder is 15 divided by 2 is 7.5 plus half inch for seam allowance, that is 8. So I marked it at the shoulder, 1 inch for the shoulder slant, and I'll mark 8 inches as her chest line or her armhole line, whichever one you choose to call it. Then from the shoulder I'll measure the bust point. The bust point is 11 inches. The under bust is 14 inches, that is 3 inches from the bust point. Then the half length is 17 inches, and I'll add extra 4 inches for the Basque waistline, for the Basque shape, and that is 21. You make sure that your Basque is more than 4 inches or 4 inches at least. It should be 4 inches at least, so that the triangular shape will be more prominent. Then I'll add extra 1.5 inch for my allowance in case. The next thing that I will do is to rule these lines. I'll rule my chest line, I'll rule my bust point line, my under bust, my actual half length, and the Basque half length, the Basque waistline. Then I'll also rule my armhole, my allowance, sorry. Then from the shoulder I'll rule my armhole line. I'll connect it to the point where I marked my chest line. I'll slant my shoulder, and I will determine the midpoint for my armhole, that is from that is 4. 8 divided by 2 is 4. Then from there I curved my armhole. Then I'll mark my neckline for the yoke, 3 by 3.5 inch, and I'll also go ahead and curve it out. You can make any neckline you want for your yoke. So I'll divide my bust span, that is nipple to nipple, by 2. That is 4. That is 8 divided by 2, that is 4. So from the center front I'll measure 4 inches at my bust point, my under bust, and I'll extend the line straight down and straight up to my chest line. The next thing that I will do is to extend my chest line. Normally I'll extend it by 1 inch, but this time around I want the cleavage to show a bit, so I extended it by half inch, just half an inch, so that the cleavage will show a bit. The next thing that I will do is to mark my darts. At the under bust I'll subtract 1.5 inch from the center front and the side piece, or 1.5 inch on both sides, that is from the under bust. Then I'll connect it to the bust point. From the bust point I'll connect to the under bust, as you can see, in order to get our breast cup. Then at the chest line I'll subtract 1 each on both sides. Remember to extend it to where you extended your chest line. Then from there also I'll connect to my bust point, and I'll do that also on the side piece. As you can see, the shape of our cup is coming out gradually. Then at the bust point I'll come in by half an inch on the bust point and on the chest line, that is from the center front. I'll come in by half inch on the bust point and on the chest line, half an inch on the chest line and half an inch on the bust point. So from there I'll connect to my over bust. From the point where I marked the half inch, I'll connect to my over bust. Then I'll connect down to the point where I also marked half an inch on the bust point, and from there I will join it back to where I subtracted 1.5 inch from. And the cup for our center front is out. So from the points where I marked my 4, I'll mark 3.5 inch inwards. This will help accommodate the bust. Then from the over bust, I will connect to my chest line where the armhole line intersects the chest line, and then I'll connect it down to where I subtracted my 1.5 inch for my dart. You guys can see how I'll from the armhole points I'll connect down to where I marked 3.5 inch inwards and down to where I marked 1.5 inch. So I've labeled my yoke. I'll cut out the yoke first and keep it aside. I'll cut my armhole. So I'll keep the yoke aside, and this is the major thing that I'll be working with now. I'll not add yoke to this corset, but I used that one as a form of illustration so that you guys can understand if you want to add a yoke to your own. The next thing that I will do right now is to extend my dart line. The place where I marked my 1.5 inch, I'll extend it downwards. I've extended it down to my basque and allowance point, and I will shade this particular part that I extended. Now I'll shade it so that you guys can see the places that will cut out. We'll cut out these shaded parts. If you want, you can leave it until you are done taking your measurement, but for now I want to cut it out so that it will be clear for you guys. Let me label my horizontal lines so that it will be clear. This is my bust point, my under bust, my half length, my basque, and my allowance. I'll cut out the shaded part so that whatever I'm doing right now will be clear to you guys. So I'm done cutting out the shaded part, and this is what we are left with. So the next thing is to go ahead and take your body measurements. For the bust point, for the bust measurements, I'll take the bust measurement first before I take the measurements for the waist. So when I'm taking my bust measurements, I'll place my pattern papers this way before I take my bust measurements. Her bust is 39 divided by 4 plus 2 inches seam allowance. I'm adding my seam allowance to the pattern paper, but if you want, don't add your seam allowance to your pattern paper. After that, when cutting, you can add your seam allowance. Then I'm done measuring my bust. The next thing is to take my waist measurements. Her waist is 30 divided by 2 is 7.5 plus 3 inches. Remember that we subtracted 1.5 inch on both sides of the dart line. That is 3 inches. You add the 3 inches back, then add another 2 inches for your seam allowance. And I have marked what I got. Your waist divided by 4 plus 3 inches for what is subtracted at the dart line, and another 2 inches for your seam allowance. Then I'll go ahead and cut. Next thing that we are going to do now is to draft our basque waistline. In order to get our basque waistline, you place your bra cup, you place the front and center piece this way. You place it this way so that the lines will align. You make sure that the bra cup overlaps. Then at your half length, you come down by 1 inch, by half inch. This half inch is what you will use to join your upper part and the lower part of your gown. At the basque waistline, so you also come down by half inch. This is what you're going to use to join the upper part and the lower part of your gown, the bustier and the lower part of your gown. Then you will go ahead and connect these lines. Don't mark exactly on your half length. Remember to add half an inch so that you have an allowance for joining your waistline. So this is our basque, our triangular shape. I'll go ahead and cut it out. So after cutting, guys, this is how it looks like. Your basque waistline can be as deep as 6 inches, but according to my client, she doesn't want her own to go deep, so I made it 4 inches. So the next thing that I will do right now is to cut out my back piece. I'll introduce a pattern paper for my back piece. I'll cut out the rough part so that everything will be okay. In order to make it easier and shorter, I placed my pattern paper, the front pattern, on the back pattern this way. I placed it this way. Instead of taking another measurement, I placed it this way and then marked my half length points and my armhole points. And that will make it very easier, very easy for me. The difference between the front and the back panel is that the front will be longer than the back. They will be equal at the half length, but the center front will be deeper than that of the back. So the back will stop at 16 inches. Remember that I added half inch for joining. Then they will be equal at the armhole part too. So I've marked my line for the back. Then I'll introduce the front panel back too. I'll introduce it back too. This is how I did it. I'll introduce it back as well, and I will just trace out the measurement on the front, on the back. I'll just trace it on the back, and that is it for my back. I don't have to take another measurement for my back. I'll cut it out before I'll go ahead and do other things that I want to do at the back. So after cutting it out, remember, I don't know if you noticed that I did not add any zip allowance to this back panel. I'll tell you guys later why I didn't add any zipper allowance to this back panel. I'll go ahead and mark my dart line, that is 4 inches, and at the sides of this dart line I'll subtract half an inch on both sides. So I'll extend this 4 inches line, I'll extend it upwards, and I'll draw my half an inch. This is what I will subtract on the back from. This is what I'll pick while sewing my dart. Then at the zipper allowance I subtracted 2. Remember, I did not add any zipper allowance. Then from the back panel too, I also went in by 2 because I want it to be open at the back. I will lace it. I'll add a loop for the lacing. I don't need this, so the back part will be open. Then I'll shade it so that you guys understand. This is what I subtracted. I will cut it out. Instead of adding 2 inches seam allowance, I subtracted extra 2 from the center back so that the back will be open because I'll lace it. So that is it for the back. And for the yoke, I will cut out the shoulder slants and I'll cut out my neckline. Remember guys, I'm not going to use the yoke for this corset. I just used it to illustrate if in case you want to add a yoke to your own. The next thing that I will do is to cut out my bra cup. Remember, I've not cut out my bra cup. I'll cut out my bra cup from the center piece and the side piece, and after cutting it out, I will label it so that when I'm cutting, I'll be very sure. This is the center. I labeled it as C and the side as X. So this is it, guys. When cutting, remember to add half an inch on all the sides of your bra cup. The same thing applies to the side of the side piece, the center of the side piece, and the center front. Remember to cut it out on fold, because I assume that I cut it, as you can see, I cut it out on fold, and then had added half an inch around the area where I will join it with the bra cup. So I've added my interface. I added a light interface on the lining part. I cut out the lining for each piece. I cut out my velvet, and I used the velvet fabric for this corset. I added a hard interface on the velvet in order to achieve stability. We all know that velvet can be so stretchy, but due to I'm sewing a corset, I added a hard interface to it in order to achieve stability. Then what I'll do right now is to join my center front and my side front. This is for the right side, and I'll go ahead and join for the left side as well. I'll join the left side, and remember, guys, to give it a nice press. It is very important. I'll repeat what I did on the fabric on the lining. I'm done with the right side. I'll go ahead and join the left side as well. Guys, feel free to trim if you have excess. And this is the back. I'll keep it aside for now. I'll go ahead and join my bra cups. I'm trying to match the left and the right, the center and the side. So I'll go ahead and join my bra cups. I'll join for my fabric, and I'll also join for my. I'm done joining for one part of the bra cup. I'll do same for the other part and the lining as well. So after joining, this is how it looks like. Remember, I did not cut a wording for this bra cup. I want to use an ready-made bra cup instead. So I'm trying to trim the bra cup so that it can fit into the space that I made for it. I'm trying to trim it, and as you can see, it is very nice. But remember, guys, I'll notch these bra cup pieces that I've joined. I'll notch them and give them a very nice press before joining them to my bustier parts. I'll notch both the lining and the fabric, and I'll give them a nice press before joining. So I'm trying to make a strip in form of a bias. This is what I will use to add the channels for my boning. Remember that I'm going to add a boning on this corset in order to achieve firmness and stability. It will help us snatch the waist as well. So I'm trimming off the excess, the unwanted parts, and I'll go ahead and sew more. After joining, I'll trim out the unwanted parts. Then I'll show you guys how I placed it, on how I made the channel on my corset. So you introduce your center front. You do this after you must have ironed the joinings on your bustier. This is how I'll run the strips on it. I'll make sure that they are neatly placed and neatly secured. So this is for the center. I'll go ahead and do same for the side. You are free to initiate any design that you want, and after that, This is how it looks like. Guys, in case you're wondering how I secured my bra cup on my bra cup pieces, I used a liquid gum to secure them so that they won't shift. So after that, I'll go ahead and join the bra cup to my center front, and after joining, this is how it looks like. Then I'll also make another stripe for my lacing. This is the back. This is how it looks like after I finish adding the lacing. Then I'll go ahead and insert my boning. I'll use my scissors to trim out the edges so that they won't be so sharp. I'll also make sure that they stopped at least 1 inch before the half length so that it won't interfere while joining our upper part and the lower part of the gown. I'll insert them and make sure that they are neatly secured. Then after that, I'll go ahead and take my body measurements for the bust and the waistline. I'll take my bust measurement. After taking my bust measurement, I'll take my waist measurement. Remember that your bust area is standing firm before you take your measurements. Then I'll go ahead and join the front and the back, and after joining, guys, this is what you will get. Remember to run a stitch around the waistline in order to secure your boning. So I'll iron it and I'll fold it this way. After folding this way, I'll go ahead and trim my waistline, that is the 16 inches area. I will not touch the basque waistline. I'll trim the 16 inches area so that everything will be sharp. Then I placed it on my, I'm done joining the front and the back part for the lower part of the gown. Then I'll open my basque waistline and place it this way. While I was cutting the lower parts, I used 16 as my half length for both the front and the back. So after sewing the upper part, I'll place it this way on the front and trace out the shape of the basque on it. This is the easiest method for me. After tracing it out, I'll cut, but I won't cut exactly on the line where I traced it out. I'll come up by at least 0.4 inches, because when you are joining, if you cut it exactly on the place you traced it, you realize that the lower part of the gown will be wider. But if you do it this way, after joining, all of them will align. Just cut out your skirt with your normal half length. Then after sewing the upper part, place it on it and trace out. This is just the easiest way for sewing my own basque waistline. So I'm trying to open the zipper allowance that I secured initially, and I'll secure the waistline with a straight stitch. Then after doing this, I'll introduce my bustier, the upper parts. I'm done securing the waistline. I'll introduce the upper part. First of all, I'll place the center together. My joining will start from the center. I'll join for the left side, and after joining for the left side, I'll turn it over and start from the center again to join my right side. This is how I did it. I'm done with the left side. I'll flip it, then start from there also to join my right side. Remember to iron properly and overlock. If you don't want to overlock, you can cover the waistline with a bias strip. So I'm done, guys. Please remember to give it a nice press and finish the waistline properly. I did not show the sleeve video. You can attach any sleeve of your choice. So after joining, this is what I have at the end of the day. Thank you so much, guys. It will take a long period of time, but just make sure that you take it slowly and iron properly while sewing. So this is the finished look on my client, and she's so happy. As you can see, the waist is snatched because it has a lacing at the back. You can actually adjust the waist anyhow and the bust anyhow you want it. If you want it to be tight or to be loose, you can do that. Thank you guys for watching my video. Thank you so much for your support.